Today. Uh, Let me ask you something before we even begin. How many of you in the audience or whoever is watching us have sat through an AI strategy presentation in the last 6 months and thought, this sounds great, but where are the actual results? So you are not alone. That tension between AI promise and AI proof is exactly why we all are here today. Welcome to today's webinar, The AI Outcome Imperative, How Enterprise Leaders Are Scaling Real Business Value. I'm genuinely excited about this one. So, just to let you guys know about me, my name is Nitin Naveen. I'm VP Innovation Strategy at AI CoreSpot. Nearly 2 decades in this industry, working alongside global consulting firms and enterprise leaders. And I can tell you, the conversations we had about AI the 5 years ago looks completely different from what's happening on the ground today. The shift from experimentation to execution is real and it's accelerating as well. Before we dive in, thanks to my colleagues Arvind and Naveen, these two guys have worked relentlessly behind the scenes to bring today's webinar together. Please join me in a round of virtual applause for them. Now, for those of you joining us for the first time, let me tell you a little bit about who we are at AI CoreSpot. We started our journey 5 years ago, started with one mission, build a place where the brightest minds in tech would come together, learn together, and grow together. All centered around all the emerging technology, which includes AI, Gen AI, machine learning, robotics, IoT, and the technology shaping our future. Today, AI CoreSpot has become that knowledge hub, a community trusted by professionals and enterprises globally. Every month, we bring you fresh themes, fresh perspectives, and real insights from distinguished industry leaders, subject matter experts, and partners who aren't just talking about innovation, they are living it. We curate content across webinars, blogs, videos, podcasts, and monthly newsletters to make sure you are never more than a click away from what matters most in the tech industry. Our vision is to become the world's leading AI driven professional community. And with audiences like this one, I genuinely believe we are well on our way. So, let's talk about what's in store for you today. We are going deep on the things that actually matters when it comes to AI at scale, which is ROI, data strategy, tech stack choices, AI governance, KPIs, cost optimization, and much more where it is being headed now. No fluff, no theory, just real insight from the leaders who are doing this right now. And speaking of real leaders, let me introduce the remarkable panel we have assembled for today's discussion. Our first speaker is Rick Khurana, who is head of Gen AI at One Main Financial. Our second speaker is Abhilash Vantaram, who is VP of Emerging Tech and Global Head of Innovation at Infovision. Our third speaker is Arpita Bhaumik. She is Head of Commercial and Patient Services IT at Alexion Pharmaceuticals. And our next speaker is Ipshita Chakravarti. She is Director Data Science and Applied AI at HelloFresh. And moderating today's conversation, someone who brings both the strategic sharpness and the ability to draw out the insights that matter, Priya Reddy. She is founder and CEO, AI and Data Strategy and Innovation at Priya Reddy Consulting. One quick note before we begin. The views and insights shared by our speakers today represent their own personal perspectives and experiences and are not reflective of the organizations which they represent for. All right, I think we have waited long enough. This is the conversation the industry needs right now. Over to you, Priya, to begin this exciting panel discussion.
Thank you, Nitin, for kicking off this great panel. I welcome everyone to this great and timely conversation. And thank you for joining us for the most important topic in today's world, the AI outcome imperative, how enterprise leaders are scaling real business value. So we are at an interesting point in the AI journey, right? For the last couple of years, many organizations have been experimenting, piloting, testing tools, and trying to understand what generative AI can actually do to businesses. But now the conversation has shifted. The question is no longer, can we use AI, right? The real question in today's world is, how can we create measurable business value from AI responsibly, repeatedly, and at scale? That is what makes today's discussion more important. And we have leaders here from financial services, Rick, life sciences, Arpita, food and consumer operations, Ipshita, and technology services, Abhilash. So each of these industries have different constraints, different data environments, and different risk considerations. But they all share one common theme or one common challenge. How do we move from AI experimentation or pilots to business outcomes? So today, I want to keep this conversation very practical. We will talk about what is actually working, what is not working, what are we learning from those failures, and how are we creating the value in our own organizations, and what it takes to operationalize AI, and how leaders are balancing speed, governance, risk, customer experience, and measurable impact. So let's get started. To get started, I have a very a quick question. I would call it a warm-up question for each of you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready is your industry to scale AI enterprise-wide right now? So Rick, I'll start with you.
I want to go with eight. I mean, there's enough lot of excitement in finance compared to other industries. Tend to be a leader in adopting technology. So overall, I'm seeing a lot of interesting pilots being converted into full-fledged programs. So I would say eight, but there's a lot more that needs to be done to
That's
unlock
awesome.
initiatives.
That's awesome. I would agree with you, Rick, because I come from financial services and fintech background. There is a lot of momentum in that industry. Agree with you. So then I'll go with you, Ipshita.
I would say the same, cautiously optimistic between a 7 to 8. There's a lot of promise in CPG retail. I think agentic commerce, that's the next one. That's really I think the whole industry has their eyes on how do we unlock agentic commerce.
Amazing, amazing. Good to hear that. So Arpita, now how about you?
Yeah, interesting in the life science and pharma because it's so much on the patient side and governance is a big thing. We are a little bit, spread across the spectrum because we have functions which are like clinical, where looking for the next molecule where AI is used at a big scale, while in medical we have to cautiously tread based on the various compliance, HIPAA and others. While in commercial, a lot of innovation is happening. So I would not put a single number, but there's a gradual progress across the spectrum. But if I have to take an average, it is hovering between 6 to 7 if we take it across the different functions.
That's good. That's great to hear. I mean, not too behind from other industries. Awesome. So Abhilash, now up to you.
Um, so we stand in a kind of a unique place, right? So we do service, different industries like Arpita, Ipshita, all of their industries as well as services groups. So I do completely agree with their assessments on where those industries are. But as a tech services industry, I'd say we are at 11. If we are not ready for that, then we are probably not going to exist moving forward. So we are primed for that. Anybody who's not there is probably already behind. So
That's awesome. That was a very helpful question, and I'm glad that I'm hearing kind of a theme here, right? There is so much momentum going on. But there's also a real gap between AI enthusiasm and enterprise readiness and adoption. So let's now get into what's actually working. So our first round is going to be going in deep on what's actually working across these organizations as you all are implementing AI and working through your organizations in terms of the adoption. So, Rick, I will start with you for the first question. In financial services have been one of the most active areas for AI, like you mentioned earlier, but it is also highly regulated and customer sensitive, right? So, which generative AI use cases are creating the most tangible value today across productivity, you call it decision intelligence, or and customer experience? Can you talk about that, please?
Um, so first of all, thanks for the question, Priya. So the question is generative AI use cases are creating the most tangible value, right? And I would say, and you talked about three different things: productivity, decision intelligence, and the customer experience, right? I think it's all of it, right? So productivity obviously is industry agnostic, right? You want to make sure everyone is incrementally more productive because we have AI at our disposal to do a lot of undifferentiated work for us, right? So whether it's co-pilots or knowledge retrieval, document summarization, any of those things, right? That the AI excel at, even by the way, the software delivery lifecycle, right? Which is a huge productivity unlock when it comes to making our engineers more productive, not just engineers, but entire product development pipeline, right? So that for sure. But I think the biggest differentiator is going to be around decision intelligence and the workflow automation, right? This is where AI can create a differentiating value prop for your organization, right? So we have to transition from just using AI for information retrieval to using AI as a recommendation generation engine, that intelligence control plane that can synthesize insights, assist in the decision support, provide next best action. So it can do a lot of things, even within finance industry, right? Going from fraud to portfolio management to improving the customer outcomes to anomaly detection. I think this is where AI truly excels, and there are many use cases that are being looked into. The third thing we talked about, and I briefly talked about the customer experience, right? What AI truly excels at is the language, right? That's why we have most of the models are still large language models, right? They're not multi-model by nature. And putting AI in front of the customer can be truly transformative. Why? Because AI, first of all, provides you that 24/7 access to the information. You're no longer relying on the hours of operations or limited service. And then um, AI can truly create a hyper personalized experience for every customer, right? We have the intelligence control plane that can now synthesize large amount of data to really make it as a very curated and customized experience for every single customer out there, and which could be a differentiator for the company. So I think those are the three areas that I see where AI excels at, but the capabilities are maturing and growing every single day, and sky is the limit on how you can use AI.
It's great perspective and great use cases and examples that you shared, Rick. Basically, how value is becoming more specific and use case driven, right? Talked about hyper personalization and 24/7 customer experience. Those are really big. And I mean, some of the areas that companies have been struggling. And generative AI is able to quickly show value there. And I'm very happy to hear that. And let me bring Ipshita now to see what is she seeing in the industry of CPG, right? Because moving from a successful model to something production ready and enterprise wide is where many organizations struggle. So Ipshita, in consumer facing businesses, AI has to work very close to the customer, similar to what Rick talked about in the financial services, but also inside real operational workflows, right? So, what lessons have you learned about operationalizing AI and moving from successful models to production ready systems?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Priya. Lot of lessons learned, and sometimes the hard way, honestly, sometimes the hard way. But you know what? One of the important lessons learned is the model is almost never the hardest part. Yes, it is the exciting part, it is the most exciting part, but getting it into production, keeping it there, making it useful, that's where things get real. And I can give an example. I learned this, quite in a hard way in a prior role when my team was building this, predictive customer LTV system for a direct-to-consumer player, direct-to-consumer space. Of course, the modeling work was exciting. We had strong results in validation, but the real challenge was how do you make it useful to this growth team that is managing a multi-million-dollar acquisition budget week in and week out? And the answer was, you don't just hand them a model. We don't just give them, here's a notebook, here's a model in production. No, but we build a system around it. And that system, it can comprise of things like a weekly automated retraining, comparison against a held out cohort. You auto promote when only your new versions clear a threshold. You don't auto promote when they don't. And you deliver the scores to the dashboards of the end users every Monday morning or whatever the cadence is, but deliver it to the end users where it matters to them. So zero manual intervention. And that's when the model actually becomes a business tool. And then, more recently also, it's the same principle that applies more recently in a generative AI use case where we built an engine to listen to customer feedback at scale, like Rick was talking about customer feedback, millions of signals, multi-market, multi-brand. Of course, the LLM part was the exciting part, but we had to think of a whole set of production considerations. So there was multilingual data. There was, near real-time SLAs. There was privacy requirements. And you had to make the outputs actionable for the real product and operations people who needed to know what are our customers talking about, like what are their friction points week over week. So that required us to build, this system that is also coupled to our internal business taxonomy. So, coming back to your original question, what are the learnings? The learning is technology is exciting, but that is only half of it. And the other half is people, processes, and you need the model's outputs, almost embedded into, I would say the actual operating rhythms of the business. Embed it in the product prioritization forums, embed it in escalation workflows. So if it's not in the room where, these decisions are getting made, then it ends up being, just great insights sitting in a dashboard that nobody is going to open. So the principle I keep coming back is model isn't done when just the code runs. It is done when it is actually influencing a decision.
That's amazing. I love what you just said, right? That is a very important point. Just for anyone who is building, who is scaling at their own organizations, because AI does not create value just sitting in a lab, just sitting in a dashboard. It creates value when it changes a decision, when it enhances a process, when it is adopted at the enterprise scale, and when it is impacting customer experience. Otherwise, the models are not creating value. I also see that, many people expect models are creating the value, but it's not just the models, it's the data, it's the models, it's the workflow integration, and it is the culture and around the organization in terms of adopting these AI tools. Thank you for sharing that answer
Yeah, of course.
and perspective, Ipshita. Now moving on to Arpita, another industry, life sciences. I'd love to bring your perspective from life sciences, Arpita. Healthcare and life sciences have some of the most meaningful AI opportunities because of the obvious reasons we all know, but also some of the highest responsibility, right? So I want to ask you, where are you seeing AI create the greatest impact on patient outcomes and commercial operations?
Thank you, Priya. Excellent question. And as Ipshita and Rick were saying, and I was feeling that, yes, we are not alone. And so many of our viewers who are there, I think all of us share similar problems, similar challenges. Talking about life sciences and pharma, and you did mention that there's a lot of governance, there's a lot of patient data involved, and we need to be really careful how we are delving into this journey. The entire industry is pretty excited, and we are really trying to move the needle, I think, in the commercial side and in the operations side. And let's talk in two perspectives. One is the internal and another is the external. On the external side, the patient services operations, I think there's a huge impact that AI can bring in really moving the needle, really, reducing the no joy work of our case managers when they go through the benefits verification. It's so much painful for the patients to go through it day in day out. So even a little efficiency gain can create so much better patient experiences. And obviously all this comes with the people, process, and technology, because we can get the most fancy platform or the AI tool, but if we do not see the acceptance or adoption within our services team, I think we are not doing the right job. So change management is huge in pharma and life sciences. Talking about the hub operations, and also that's also another place where we see that there's a lot of opportunity in leveraging AI. One use case that I want to share from my past life and also current is the medical and the legal review that used to take like maybe you'll not believe months together, and now it has really reduced the cycle time to a couple of weeks, and people are now talking about days. So this is so exciting to see that in promotional review and in MLR. Another area where we see a lot of traction, and thanks to some of the hyperscalers in next best action to really inform the HCPs or the healthcare practitioners that where the real engagement lies, what are the key signals where they have to go after, and be in the right moment in front of the physicians with the right quality, with the right information. So nudges and next best action is something that that industry is very excited and are trying to implement at scale. Obviously, I did talk about at the start of the conversation on the clinical side. Launches is a particularly very interesting area, because while we want to shorten that entire value stream in a pharma, a drug launch, we want to also, get our therapies faster to the patients, right? So in the launches, you laugh at, and probably, that's the maturity level that, we used to work in Excels and smart sheets, and now we are talking about leveraging AI, how to make it more seamless, how to make it more easy, faster. I think that is on top of the mind. Speed and scale has been the talk of the town across our industry, but definitely with a lot of compliance. We'll talk a little bit on the governance and compliance later, but I'd always want to, put a focus on that. We can't do it if we do not embed it within the design phase, because it will not help if we take it like post-production. So we have to really think before and really bake it into the process. And during this transformation, what we are seeing is, and previously, whenever any new technology used to come, we used to think that, let's plug it in, right? Now with the new age of AI, it's no longer plug in, because you have to really reinvent your business processes when you have to adopt this new age AI. Otherwise, you have to again and again reinvent. So the cycle will continue. So, thinking fresh, thinking and looking into the processes is something that we have to, keep watch
Yeah.
out.
That's great. That's great. I'm seeing a theme. Even you three come from different industries because all of you are talking about how to provide value to customer, value to your own organization. And you also touched on change management. They're also big when it comes to implementing generative AI or agentic AI frameworks. But now that also connects very well to the broader enterprise question. Once we identify value, how do we make it repeatable? So Abhilash, let me bring you in from the enterprise technology and innovation side as you work across the industries. How should enterprises build an AI value realization framework that connects initiatives to revenue growth and operational efficiency?
Right. I'm unmuted now. So thank you so much, Priya. Excellent question again. And we've heard some really awesome practical thoughts from my co-panelists here, and I couldn't agree more with them. Right. So I want to look at how to kind of pull all of these things together into an umbrella, that the wider framework. So for the value realization framework, again, we can talk about measurement aspects like observability or KPI movement or things like that kind of fall into the implementation aspects. But I think I'm going to take a slightly different pivot on this because I think, like Ipshita was alluding to, most AI value realization frameworks are kind of built backwards a little bit. They start with the capability and construct a business case around it after the fact. The frameworks that actually connect to revenue and efficiency have I feel, a couple of foundational principles that cannot be compromised, in my opinion. First is, like Arpita was mentioning, the portfolio visibility. Before you invest at scale, you need to be able to see your entire AI initiative landscape clearly. Map every initiative on two dimensions. How novel is the problem? How novel is the solution? So most enterprises, believe it or not, when they do this exercise for the first time, they discover a pretty uncomfortable truth that they have massive concentration in low risk, safe, and incremental work, what we call the little I innovations, and almost nothing on the frontier where transformational revenue opportunity actually lives, right? So those are the big I innovation initiatives. So you cannot connect AI to growth if your portfolio is structurally incapable of generating it. So that's the first principle. The second principle I'd like to talk about, foundational principle, is again, one most organizations skip entirely. I'm glad that the panelists here, they're doing it the right way. Before you engineer AI into a workflow, understand how humans and AI will actually work together inside it, not in the abstract, but workflow by workflow, deliberately, decision by decision. The questions that probably have to be answered for that is before any build begins is, in this specific workflow, what does the human do? What does AI do? And how do they hand off to each other, right? So now with these two principles as a foundation, the framework that I personally found most useful for connecting AI initiatives to sustain business value, it's what we refer to as the 3I flywheel. It's not a ladder, it's a flywheel. It's a 3I flywheel. The first I in the 3I is for implementation. It's a little counterintuitive, but when you look at implementation, what implementation asks is, can we make AI work? Period. Can we make AI work? It's about moving from isolated pilots to production systems that deliver sustained and measurable value. The discipline here is more problem first, not what can this model do or not what can this tech do, but what specific business outcome will it improve, or by what metric, over what time frame. Organizations that cannot answer these kind of questions cleanly, I don't think they have a proper AI initiative. They have a technology experiment to a large extent, right? So that is where most of the smaller innovations exist. The second I in the 3I flywheel in that framework is integration. Now, integration asks a different question to implementation. It is, can I become, can AI become how we work? Not whether AI can work, but can AI become how we work, right? And this is the real crossing point. AI in implementation, it kind of handles one workflow, if you look at it that way. But in integration, AI means insights from that workflow flow into adjacent decisions, product, pricing, operations, risk, all of those. Now they're connected and they're reinforcing. So while implementation creates those islands, integration truly creates those ecosystems. Now the third I in that framework, practical framework, is innovation. Now again, it's counterintuitive. Innovation is everywhere, but here is where we are talking about the big I innovation initiatives, the frontier innovation initiatives, right? And this asks a totally different question. Can AI change what we are capable of imagining, right? This is the frontier big I innovation initiatives that we're talking about. So this is where AI kind of stops being a tool that kind of accelerates what we already do and becomes a capability that expands what we can attempt. New revenue streams, new customer propositions, new business models, all the things that my panelists were talking about. Right? So these probably were not even previously conceivable. So the organizations winning here aren't the ones with the most AI initiatives. They're the ones who achieve value realization of AI, not as an additive factor, but as a multiplicative factor. And how do you achieve that? I think it is these three phases: implementation, integration, innovation, that kind of reinforce each other in that flywheel. A strong implementation builds that credibility that enables deeper integration. A deep integration creates that connected infrastructure that makes innovation possible. And innovation then generates new applications that cycle back into implementation. That's the flywheel, right? So again, there's several layers of details in how you govern these, but that's probably for another discussion. So, Priya, you're on mute.
Yeah. That's an awesome framework you shared, Abhilash. 3I flywheel, right? And how you shared is like something you connected that 3 I's very practically, right? Implementation, integration, and innovation. I love that. And I can already see the theme across the round one that we were talking, right? What is actually working. Now we want to move into the next phase of our webinar here. How do we scale from here, and how can we have that adoption at the enterprise level? It was a great conversation for the round one, and I'm excited to get into the round two. So in this round, I want to shift from, like I said, what is working to what is not working. What does it take to scale, right? Because most organizations do not fail because they lack ideas, or they lack skills, or they lack infrastructure. They struggle because scaling AI requires that right foundation, governance, operating model, culture, and that execution discipline. So for this round, Arpita, I would start with you. And my question to you is, what are the biggest barriers preventing AI pilots from becoming enterprise-wide capabilities in healthcare and life sciences? I think we are still doing good on the time, maybe a little bit behind on the schedule, but we are good. So yeah, I'd like to hear from you, Arpita.
Yeah, thanks, Priya, for the question. Yes, we'll accelerate because we all want to accelerate here. Excellent question, and we need to be optimistic, right? There are barriers, but let's first, internalize and understand collectively that we have to acknowledge that there are barriers. Specific to our industry, the number of barriers, but in my mind, there are like top three, top four barriers. Number one is really outcome definition. And this is just not the business or the technology team working in silos, right? Together we have to, really define what the outcomes we want to achieve. It's just not technology outcomes, right? Obviously, the productivity improves, faster, code, better integration, just like what Abhilash mentioned, that flywheel really matters. But really understanding in terms of value realization and putting it on pen and paper. And what is very important is to understand what's the current state, right, where we are, and then what is that delta that I would achieve with the AI initiative. So really articulating it in a quantitative manner, the outcomes is very important, and tie it to the larger business goal and objectives. I think in our industry, most of us already have AI strategy 2030 and 2045, whatever you want to call, but really tie it to that, the bigger North Star is very important. So we continuously make progress. The second most important thing, and that's why, I was telling you that the governance side of the world, right? So, we tend to get excited, and believe me, in pharma, data, yes, we had talked about, we all realize that data is the oil. Data is the key to, have the right AI initiative and realization, but that's not a challenge actually now. Even the model is not a challenge, because my co-panelists have clearly mentioned that we always get excited of the different tools, and this is out there in the marketplace. We can definitely get there. The one of the biggest challenges that we are seeing is in the governance side. We really have to bake in the privacy, the transparency, how it will impact the behaviors and the ways of working in the future state early on with the right the right governance in place is very important. I think sometimes we miss the game when we put AI governance later in the stage. It should be before, so that sometimes it does happen that we are on a path and later on we realize that my AI governance is taking time, and that what's create a little bit of reaction within the business and the technology, and reduces the excitement around achieving the goal. The third is very important and very key to the success is alignment, and alignment with an orchestrator. What does that mean is literally you need one AI orchestrator. It can be sitting within your business based on your operating model, right? Or it can be a joint business IT, but you still need one orchestrator who can be your single point of contact to really, yes, AI is federated, but to take these big initiatives, to take the big bets, you still need that governance and have a strong partnership. And that's where an IT business partner plays a very critical role to really translating the business needs into project and program outcomes. So typically these three are, I would not say barrier. I'd still want to take it in an optimistic manner that these are our areas of opportunity. I think technology will solve. It has been already solving for us. But if we fix this, I think it's a lot of win ahead.
That's awesome. So, like you mentioned, they're not barriers, but they're opportunities, because that's where we can actually prove the value. That can be your organization's differentiator, because that's an opportunity to level up and implement right things around governance, not to be an add-on later on, right? But bake that into the build process itself. That's exactly what I am seeing across the industry while I help my clients as well, Arpita. I'm glad that it is resonating with your industry as well. I feel that the balance between governance and execution is critical. Now, I would like to move on to Ipshita and want to connect that to prioritization, because most companies have more ideas or use cases than capacity to execute. So, Ipshita, the question to you is, how do you prioritize AI investments across personalization, customer experience, and operational efficiency? Because you may have thousands of use cases that were put together and waiting to be taken up and execute.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. I come from environments where, that are primarily consumer tech. So there's a lot of excitement. There's absolutely no dearth of pilots or ideas. But here's a simple, a real prioritization filter that I feel like it has worked well, which is find the decisions that are happening every day at scale, but that are still running on incomplete information, or that are running on gut feel, like the gut instinct, like businesses, we still run on gut instinct, right? So find those. That's where AI can create the lasting value. Not the flashiest use case. Doesn't have to be, the most cutting edge model, but it definitely has to be the most repeated, the most costly, and the most consequential one. And Priya, you talked about, two or three different areas, but oftentimes the best AI bets, they can actually deliver across all of these problem areas at the same time. So you don't even need to prioritize by problem area if we really find that what is the most costly decision, that as an organization we are taking. So again, just to give a quick example, think of an agentic customer feedback assistant, one that ingests customer comments, survey responses, customer care agent interactions, and one that is surfacing what customers are actually telling us about their pain points. And when you design the agentic framework, you can also think of an automatic topic finder, which particularly becomes relevant in a landscape where consumer companies like us, we are continuously changing our product assortment, right? So in such cases, the feedback assistant it's surfacing emergent themes in almost near real time, even before they become big burning customer friction problems. So that's simultaneously, it is a CX win, it is an operations efficiency win, and it is also feeding directly into your personalization strategy. So, keeping it short with, Gen AI, as with any AI, there's of course the technology part that is table stakes. But if I had to give one concrete prioritization rule, I would say fund the problems where a decision, where a wrong decision or a slow decision has a clear, measurable cost. Everything else is noise. So start with the most expensive decision in your business that is still being made suboptimally or with gut feel, and that's where AI should be prioritized.
I absolutely love that perspective, Ipshita, because it's a very practical lens, I would call it. Because yes, it is also part of it. What you're saying is, it's identifying the problem as well, but it is you're not actually solving a single problem, right? But this lens can address multiple problems across the organization. That's why I absolutely love that perspective. So moving on to Rick in financial services, prioritization also has to account for risk, compliance, and trust because we are dealing with the consumer data, right? And let me bring you to this question, Rick. How do you balance innovation speed with the governance, risk, and compliance while scaling AI in a regulated industry? Because I literally coming from that industry, I do know how the fintech companies move, how fastly they want to make decisions and move on. But always that governance angle, risk perspective, that's what keeps the industry grounded. So I would like to hear from you.
Thanks, Priya, and some great perspectives shared by my panelists here. So, going to the question that you asked, um, many organizations they treat governance as something that slows innovation. And my whole career is made out of innovation, right? And I believe it's the opposite. The organizations that scale or that would scale AI the fastest are going to be the ones with the strongest governance foundations, right? Now, I'm not saying that you stop all your initiatives and start focusing on just the governance, right? No, we have governance needs to be an enablement function. It needs to create the highway on which the cars can go at a much faster speed, right? So we have to shift from governance as a gating exercise and treat governance as a platform or as a capability, right? So there would be multiple use cases out there, and the organizations would have to harness the power of AI and scale across many use cases at the same time. Although I agree with what has been said so far, go for the largest business value first, right? So that you can prove that how AI can be scaled and how AI can truly be a differentiator contributing to the top line and the bottom line, right? But having said that, we all know the excitement in the industry, excitement in the company, and we have many opportunities that at some point all need to be unlocked at the same time. So, what would it take from the governance standpoint? AI is non-deterministic by nature, right? How do you get the degree of determinism? that's expected in a regulated industry, right? I mean, AI can hallucinate, AI can have biases, right? So there are regulatory frameworks as well that we need to keep in mind. But what are some of those reusable governance capabilities? One is the model risk frameworks, right? We have to constantly monitor the models for biases, for hallucinations, from prompt injections and stuff like that. Then the governance around the prompts, right? There is so much value we can get by having some sort of a governance around the prompts that are used within the company, right? Maybe a marketplace, right? For the prompts, right? Marketplace to manage any citizen build AI agents as well. The one that's close to my heart is evaluation frameworks, which to me is absolutely the key. The terminology that I want to use is evaluation driven development, which means you put the evaluations first, identify how you're going to be evaluating your agents, whether you run the simulations or have a robust evaluation framework, and then you build the agents because these agents you need to continuously have that feedback loop that looks for any anomalies or in the agent behavior, in production, any compliance flags, so you're constantly evaluating before, at runtime, and after. So that's the framework. Then the whole monitoring, observability, human in the loop is absolutely the key, right? Especially in the beginning, right? When we are still learning, you want to make sure we give appropriate agency to our AI agents where they can make a decision, but they should bring or have a human off ramp or bring very deliberate about bringing human in the loop at the right juncture to make sure there is that oversight as you scale the solutions, right? And having all these things as the foundations which are out there, plus some other, having the steering codes and AI councils and AI governance committees, right? Those things are absolutely the must, right? So again, just to summarize this whole discussion is, um, I don't think we need to inspect every car by rebuilding the highway, right? We build the safe highway so the traffic can move faster. Now, one last thing I want to say is there is a tiering to some of the governance as well, right? Not everything needs to be treated the same. So have that risk tiering upfront, right? What is low risk, medium risk, high risk, so that you apply appropriate governance, right? At the end of the day, we have to enable innovation. We have to enable the organization to move fast. So things that you can do upfront to minimize the risk and the foundational capabilities that you can create that scales the AI usage in the organization will be the key differentiator.
That's awesome. You touched on several strong points, and I also 100% agree with you on the governance piece because governance is not something that need to be seen as a blocker, right? You talked about capability. It should be a capability. It should be an enabler, right? That's when you have that strong foundation, you can go with speed. You can scale your AI capabilities. But speed also comes with risk, and without governance, business value will not sustain. So I want to pivot from this conversation to the next with Abhilash because Abhilash see organizations across different maturity levels. And Nitin, are we still doing good on the timeline? Just wanted to have a quick check.
Yeah, we are doing great. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. So, Abhilash, from what you see helping clients across the industries, across different maturity levels, what common traits do you see among organizations that successfully move from AI experimentation to measurable business outcomes?
Absolutely, Priya. Thanks. That's a great question, and I want to start with a reframe that I think cuts to the heart of that question, right? So the narrative in our industry is that AI will transform businesses, but what I've seen across enterprise programs, across industries, is almost exactly the opposite. Businesses that have the intent and the organizational structure, like Rick mentioned, right? So businesses that kind of have that intent and the organizational structure to transform themselves are the ones that can actually use AI. It's not the other way around that we've seen. Excuse me. So again, I've seen 4 basic traits in the organizations that have been successful in moving from AI experimentation to measurable business outcomes. And let me list them, right? So the first one is identity clarity, right? So the organizations that scale AI successfully know exactly what business they are in, and they use AI to become better at that business, not to become a different business. It is so easy in today's world when you're sitting on petabytes of data and powerful models to redefine your identity around the technology, to say, we are a data company now, right? So that has also happened quite dominantly in the past 5-6 years. Right. So the organizations that kind of resisted that kind of drift, that said, we are a supply chain company, we are a financial services company, we're a network company, and we will use data and AI to become the best version of that. They are the ones who are, where AI delivered durable value. That's number one trait that I've seen, clarity. The second trait is that they follow the right engineering sequence. And by that, I mean workflow engineering first, empathy engineering second, and technology engineering last, in that order, never reversed, right? So by workflow engineering, we mean, you define with precision what process the organization goes through to deliver its product or service, how the product lands in the hands of the customer, not at a high level, but with specificity. What are the steps, the decision points, the failure modes, the handoffs? They lead with how AI and humans kind of work together, like we've talked about. Now, after workflow engineering is empathy engineering, right? That is where you then ask, what does the day in life of the person who delivers the solution actually looks like? Are they at a terminal, on a mobile device in the field, or things like those? This is what kind of breaks down the adoption barriers before they actually form. What is the point of having tremendous AI that is not adopted, right? So, and here's that key insight that most organizations miss. When you get empathy engineering right, and people actually adopt that tool, their tribal knowledge, which is 70% of the knowledge that you have in the organization, not the data, but the tribal knowledge, that starts flowing into the model. And the AI and the human then after that kind of compound each other, right? So empathy engineering is very critical even before technology engineering. And being a technologist all my life, this is kind of counterintuitive, but this is the fact. Technology engineering is kind of where you finally build. That's the last frontier, right? So the reason most AI pilots fail to scale is the sequence is kind of inverted. The technology is built first. The workflow and the human are then retrofitted into that fact, right? So the model in that case becomes a showcase for data science teams, but it kind of becomes Greek and Latin to everyone else. Now, the third trait, I'll quickly fly through these next two. The third trait, I think, is that they manage the AI portfolio with the discipline of a proper value realization framework, like a 3I flywheel, something we've talked about earlier. I'm not going to jump deeper into that. We've already covered a big piece of that. So that is a third trait where they have the discipline to manage their AI portfolio. Fourth, and probably the deepest trait, is that they've built adaptive organizations, not just AI programs. This is very critical, right? So adaptive organizations, in my mind, has 3 layers working together. Senior leaders who maintain a portfolio view and make hard choices on what to accelerate and what to stop. Your question to Ipshita was very relevant, right? When you have so many choices, how do you prioritize? You need to really know which ones to drop and which ones to pick, right? That's very key. And senior managers, senior leaders are very key in that part of it. The middle managers who are genuinely empowered to then, kind of run structured experiments and move initiatives forward without needing executive approval at every small step, right? And the third and last, but very important, is the frontline people who kind of feel part of the journey, who can give feedback, whose domain knowledge feeds back into the model, who trust the AI because AI was built starting from where they are, not they're coming in and adopting these. right? So when these three layers are aligned and they're self-correcting, you just don't deploy AI. You kind of build an organization that gets smarter every time AI is used. When you combine all of these with the highway that Rick is talking about and some of the other thoughts that Arpita and Ipshita have talked about, those are kind of the general traits that really the organizations towards a better successful path.
That was great, Abhilash. I'm pretty sure audience who are listening to our webinar already wanting to go back and listen again to capture what exactly you mentioned about three layers. The order is also very important when it comes to implementing those, right? And
Yeah.
I'm absolutely loving this conversation. And I wish we can continue this for another hour, but we all have better things to do. So while still, questions are coming in from the audience. I will ask one quick question that I think many leaders are thinking about as they are working through the experimentation pilots and scaling the AI organizations, right? When an organization has multiple AI pilots underway, what is the first sign that one of them is actually ready to scale? If each of you could share your thoughts, that would be great.
Any particular order for you?
No, you can go, Abhilash. Yeah.
No, I can go first. I think the problem first answer, I feel, is a key pivot, right? So, when you have two different candidates that you're looking at, if you're able to write down, like in one sentence, what business problem it solves, what happens if that business problem persists, and what is the measurable evidence that would tell you whether that problem has been resolved. It's not about the model accuracy, right? But a business number. You have to be very specific, very purposeful. Put numbers in there and don't just use suitcase words that can mean different things to different people. Whichever candidate is able to give the clarity better and has a bigger impact radius that you're looking at, I think that is automatically becomes your prime candidate to elevate. Right, and that's a practice that I think
Yeah.
every practitioner has to look at, is be
Yeah.
precise in defining what it means.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
would add to what Abhi said, right? So I think again you have to be very intentional about going after the use cases that create the most value, right? And I think
Mm.
all of us talked about that, right? So even if you have multiple pilots, right, you have to be very intentional about your pilot designs, right? You need to really make sure there is clear accountability, clear ownership, right? I think accountability and ownership are the least talked facets of AI successes, but they are absolutely the most critical, right? Your business cases, how are you going to measure, right? What discipline do you want to have during the pilot implementation that would inform the scaling decisions are absolutely the key, right? How are you going to monitor the pilot, right? So I think there are a lot of things that come into it. So I think it's all about being very intentional about choosing the pilot, but having the pilot design, the measurement framework, the continuous monitoring, all that along the way to make the scaling decisions.
But I couldn't
That's
agree
right.
with Rick more. He mentioned one key problem. If you don't have a problem owner, don't pick that use case.
Right. Yeah, that's where I mean, you both talked about ownership as well, right? The the problem has to be owned. That's when the solution will become intentional. So just we are cutting very close to the time. So I would actually close this with a rapid fire question. So if someone watching today does just one thing differently after listening to our speakers, right? What would that be about their AI strategy? What should it be? Yeah. I think, Abhilash, I'll start with you on this one.
Oh, sure. I'd go back to the same foundational, the fundamental thing that we were talking about. If you have to make one change tomorrow, start looking at defining what the problem statement is in extremely clear specifics, right? Don't think about the technology at all or the solution at all. Think about the problem and think about how AI and human kind of in a double helix way, how are you going to be interoperating and getting to that solution? That is one change that I would have everybody
Yep,
start looking into.
absolutely. All right, Ipshita, can I hear from you?
Yes, yeah. Since you said this is a rapid fire, I'll keep it quick. I think pick fewer problems is what I would say. There's no point in picking, 20 different use cases and not being able to ship anyone. So it's rather better go deep on one, prove it, then scale it, then move on to the other.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Arpita, you next.
I'll build on what Ikshita just mentioned. So be very intentional and reducing that no joy work. I think that creates a lot of influence in business and ultimately in customers' mind. And just keep the framework of the viability, maintainability, the reliability, and the value metrics in mind while we take this journey along.
Awesome. Now it's Rick.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring it home, right? So quick, but very meaningful, right? Clear ownership and accountability, absolutely the must. Build enough governance so that you can scale while you're innovating, start building the governance in the parallel lane. One thing that I want to say is the organizations that would come out on the other side of this disruption that AI is going to cause and be extremely successful will have few things. One is change management practices and the adaptability. Those are the key attributes that are absolutely the must to navigate this new world of AI.
That's awesome. Awesome. I love this conversation. Thank you, everyone. This was such a thoughtful and practical discussion. The big takeaway for me from this webinar is that AI outcomes do not just happen by accident, right? It has to be intentional. I heard that word from each of you, and I'm glad that each of you are intentional about what you're building, what you're scaling, and how you're impacting your own organizations. And they require clear business alignment, disciplined prioritization, and strong data and governance foundations. And the ability to move from experimentation to operating reality, right? Thanks to Rick, Ipshita, Arpita, and Abhilash for sharing your perspectives. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Nitin, I'll hand it back to you to close out.
Thank you. Thank you, Priya. That was a great moderation from your side. And thank you for steering such a rich, focused conversation and making sure every voice in the panel had the space to shine. And Rick, Abhi, Arpita, Ipshita, honestly, the quality of this discussion has been exceptional. You didn't just share the frameworks, but you shared real experiences, real challenges, real outcomes. That what makes the conversation like this genuinely valuable. And I'm sure our audience felt that today as well. Thank you. For everyone who joined us live, thank you for giving your time today. And if you know someone who missed this session, do share it with them. The recording will be available shortly on the AI Core Spot YouTube channel. And today's session was also broadcasted live on LinkedIn Live. So it's already out there reaching a wider audience. This is just one conversation in a much bigger series. At AI Core Spot, we are constantly bringing you fresh perspectives every across the sectors that matters, which is banking, telecom, retail, insurance, consumer goods, media, healthcare, supply chain, and manufacturing. There's a lot more coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss out what's next. So stay connected with us, visit our website, follow us on our social media, subscribe to our newsletter so that you are always the first to know about upcoming events, registrations, and the latest in the tech industry. We also like to a moment to sincerely thank our partners who make events like this possible. InfoVision, who is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7 is our technology partner. Their commitment to pushing the boundaries of technology is something we are deeply proud to be associated with. To everyone in our audience today, your engagement, your curiosity, your presence is what makes AI Core Spot what it is. Please continue to share our content, connect with us, bring your networks into this community. On behalf of entire AI Core Spot team, have a wonderful rest of your day, productive week ahead, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.